a pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Welcome into a live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break on this Tuesday as we are a couple days away from game one of the NBA Finals. We also have three games in the WNBA tonight, including a very intriguing matchup. We'll get into all of that, but we have breaking news in the NBA. Welcome into this live edition. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside Albert Nguyen, also known as Analytics Capper. Tom Thibodeau fired after 5 years with the Knicks and fresh off reaching the conference finals. Not something that this franchise has done a whole lot of since they last won the title about 25 plus years ago. So certainly a shocker, but we had kind of heard that this was a potential ending to the season, even though the Knicks did get past the Celtics and reach the conference finals, Albert.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy news, but if you think about it, and if you dig deep down deeper, I mean it's honestly not that crazy. I mean, let's give him his props, right? They won consecutive 50 plus win seasons. That included a big trade in between one of those seasons from Julius Randle and Dante over to Karl Anthony Towns, and Eastern Conference Finals appearance, which is great. I think they ended up making the postseason 4 of the last 5 years. I mean, that's success that the Knicks haven't really experienced in a really long time. They've been a very mediocre franchise, basically for my entire life, and I'm 40. So with that said, I think for all of his pros or his pluses as a coach, Doug, he's limited in the fact that the way I see the top tier coaching or the coaches that actually win the whole thing, the title, he's just not at that level. He's a great coach in terms of trying to get your team out of the doldrums and into playoff contention year in, year out. That's what we saw in New York. But it requires a different type of coach to take the next step.
It's a fair point. And obviously we know about his propensity to run guys into the ground. And it's also about maximizing the roster. And if this Knicks roster has sort of immovable parts, we'll see about Towns, and maybe there could be a Durant team or a landing spot for even Giannis. Ultimately, the coach's job is to get the most out of a roster. And as you alluded to, when you have sort of the middle of the pack roster, he'll squeeze every last drip and get them to the playoffs and then some. But maybe the ceiling is lower with Tibbs than it is with his potential replacement. And that's the thing. You have to have a replacement ready to go if you're going to make this big of a decision and this big of a move. So I think it's got to be one of two options. Michael Malone, who just was relieved of his duties in Denver, a very intense coach, but he won a title there, sort of unlocked Jokic, if you will. So he has to be a logical piece, son of a coach, things like that, NBA sort of pedigree. Or the other one, little outside the box, but not that far outside, given the Villanova connection on that roster, and that's Jay Wright.
Oh, wow.
So I think one of those two, or maybe another similar sort of guy who's on the sidelines right now would be the right piece. But other than that, you don't make this move. So I understand the shock value, as you mentioned. The shock value's there, but we had heard about it, and the more I wrap my heads around it, it does make some sense as long as you have the right piece moving forward in terms of his replacement.
I'm very high on Mike Malone. So I like that name. If that name has legitimate backing behind that, I can see that working very well in New York. Obviously, it's going to depend on the people Mike Malone's going to bring in as well, right? When you hire a new coach, it also means that the staff most likely is going to be turned over in addition to all of that. And then he has to have the right people in the front office that can jive with his, I guess, personality, right? Because I think that's what it came down to in Denver. It wasn't his X's and O's. It wasn't, I don't know, not even his relationship with his players, but it was other front office, other staff that people talked they were, multiple factions within the Denver locker room. I don't know. I'm not going to, talk too much about conjecture there, but from an X's and O standpoint, he is a championship winning coach. He did get the best out of Jokic, multiple time MVP. And I think that would be a name that would get me excited if I was a Knicks coach. I don't know about Jay Wright. I'm sure he's a great coach, but I know for a fact he's not a NBA championship winning coach, right? And that's what I would be looking for if I let go of Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, no, it would be a leap of faith, and obviously you have the Villanova connection, and then to get rid of Tibbs for a guy like that would be massive. But again, it's about maximizing a roster where you're sort of pot committed to it with all the contracts. I'm fascinated by this. The Knicks are an interesting franchise for a variety of reasons, reaching the conference finals this year. But we'll segue away. But I felt like the issue in Denver was more the roster and the supporting cast around Jokic and not Malone's coaching, although they had a nice run in this postseason. So Adelman, the replacement, certainly did a solid job, and they were the only team that's really given the Thunder more than a scare. And that's where we segue to the NBA Finals. So that gets going on Thursday in OKC. Thunder are the prohibitive favorite, depending on odds history and things like that. Like the third biggest favorite since 2000. When you're talking the Lakers over the Sixers, the Warriors with Durant over the Cavs. So they're a sizable favorite here. We've seen as high as around 750, as low as 650. It's 715 right now at Bet Rivers. The comeback plus 500. And when I first saw that price, just because, this is not a repeat title contender, it's a team that has played with its food and struggled at times, particularly in that Denver series. I felt the series price was too high, Albert. But then again, I wasn't running to the window to bet Indiana. Do we really think the Pacers can win 4 out of 7 games here?
I do not. I do not. I think this is as close to a mismatch as we're going to get in a while. And I think the 715, the minus 715 price that you mentioned for Bet Rivers is going to be the best price you're going to get for the next week, right? Because I wholeheartedly believe they're going to win game 1 and 2, and at that point, there's no point betting any team. So I think OKC is going to come out. They're not going to play with their food, like you mentioned. And one thing that I keep harping on, and this is several shows into this show that we've done now, Doug, that Denver series was more of a mental hurdle for me for OKC than anything else. And the fact that they did it in 7 was almost kind of like a blessing in disguise because it challenged them, it battle tested them. They were able to take care of Minnesota really easily. And I think Indiana presents a different type of challenge, but Indiana is basically a carbon copy, but like a junior version of the Thunder, in my opinion, right? I'm not trying to belittle Indiana. They did a great job. They are Eastern Conference champions. They deserve to be in this spot. But I just think OKC is the team to beat right now. And the thing is, Doug, this might not even be their first title in the next few years, right? This could be one of several, again, just projecting out, but this could be their weakest team to win a title in the next few years.
Well, the draft capital they have and the lineup flexibility is off the charts. Now, it's a new era in the collective bargaining agreement, and certain guys are up for raises, and then who knows with the postseason awards how much that does the supermax. But yes, what Sam Presti's done there, and I'm hoping he can win a title for him because I think he's such a amazing mind, and he caught just really bad luck when Durant was coming up for free agency the exact year that the NBA expanded all the payrolls. And so it was just the worst timing of it all. And for those who don't really understand what I'm talking about, just go back and read, but it really was just bad luck. In terms of this matchup, I think the Pacers are better coached. I actually do think there is a path to victory here. In the past, like the biggest upset we've had was 2004, the Pistons over the Lakers. But that was an LA team that was coming apart at the seams. Kobe wasn't quite focal point level yet like he was in the later 2000s. And then Shaq and everything, and the Pistons were very underrated. I don't know if the Pacers are the underrated component that we could have, but I do think the Thunder are beatable. I just don't know if the Pacers can get it done. The thing with the Nuggets in that series is they had the best player. And Jokic was unstoppable. So they had the best player in the world, and he can get buckets. You can run everything through him. And then OKC had to sort of miss some shots and obviously wet the bed at the end of game one. Chet missing both free throws after they blow that lead. But I think they're capable of giving away a game here, too. But to your point, Albert, I think winning gave them the confidence and emerging from that series was really important. I do think the Pacers have an edge to them. We saw that really crystallize against Cleveland, where they mucked it up. They weren't just happy to get one game in Cleveland to start. They won that game essentially wire to wire, the series opener. I just think they're a really tough team to beat, and they won't go away quietly. So I think this is a team that could have a lead in the third quarter in one of these first two home games. I don't think it's going to be a T-Wolves team that just wasn't playing that well and missed shots. I mean, you had Jaden McDaniels missing wide open shots, things like that. I think the Pacers have a swagger to them, and I think they're a tough out. I think the game one lines are too high. I can see the Pacers covering more games than the Thunder in the series, but you're right. I don't see 4 out of 7. I think this is the Thunder's coming out process, and SGA is so silky smooth. You go watch him in person, you think he's got 18 points and he's got 33.
Yep. And the swagger, the confidence that you bring up, Doug, I don't think it's a collection of things, right? There's a multitude of things for that team that does really well. But in my opinion, that the thing that really gets that team going in terms of their toughness is their perimeter defense, Doug. So when you look at, Neesmith and Nemhard, Ben Shepherd, they'll throw in Benedict Mathurin in there to defend as well. But those guys were defending smallish guards, right? And Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, a hobbled Darius Garland. Now, and Dame Lillard in their first round. Now they're going up against a true 6'6" Shai Gilgeous. It's just a different animal. And it's not about being tough at that point. It's just not being big enough, not being long enough. And Shai's going to be able to get to his spot and hit that turnaround basically any time he wants. So for me, the path for Indiana to make this competitive, not even just win, but make this competitive, make this go at least 5 games, is to make everyone else other than SGA beat you, right? That's what they kind of did against the Knicks. They made everybody else, they centered in on Jalen Brunson, and they focused on just allowing OG and Mikal Bridges and those guys to try to beat you, and they weren't able to. So the onus for Indiana is to see if they can make Jalen Williams, Chet, and those boys come out and hit shots. But that being said, Shai is a different animal to guard compared to the small guards that I mentioned earlier. And Shai is a willing passer, and if he's not able to score points or put points in the bucket, he still can rebound. He can still assist the ball. And we know from a defensive standpoint, he's one of the rare players that averages 1 block and 1 steal. So I think Shai is kind of like the perfect guy to kind of just go over or go through that Indiana defense that made them so tough, that gave them so much swagger in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
And Halliburton struggled in the 2 regular season meetings. Chet Holmgren didn't even play, but Lou Dort did a number on Hallie. So it's going to be a little bit of a gamesmanship or strategizing on the offensive side of things as well, not just trying to get the ball out of SGA's hands, because I think Denver did that a lot in that series as well. We want you to get involved in the conversation. Join us in the comments section on the YouTube channel. Ryan Huffman chimes in. I don't see Indiana getting 4. I think it's more of a question of how many games can Indiana get. 3 is the best case in my opinion. I need to see a game first, though. And I agree with that. I need to see these teams match up, because Indiana is a much different team than we thought, although they did play OKC late in the season, but they have the second best record in the NBA since January 1. Thunder, the number 1. But this Thunder team is historically good in terms of the analytics, and that's what I keep coming back to. But they can miss shots. Indiana can apply some heat, and they could outshoot them in a few games in this series and maybe get lucky with another game. There's a path there. That's why I'm not laying the big juice, but I'm not taking the juice on the underdog as well. And hey, we have other shows we want you to check out. Obviously, Betting Weekly Fast Break is now Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. But we also have other shows where everyone does a great job, especially with the French Open going on right now and Roland Garros in Paris. Betting Weekly Tennis Live tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's always the case, Mondays through Wednesdays. Tim Dennis will join Nigel Seeley for live quarterfinal action. And this morning, Nigel and Sean Calvert released a preview of the quarterfinals on the men's side. Betting Weekly game, bet, match. So some really good content out there. We also have Betting Weekly Dojo with Nigel and Neil Channing. And then I just wrapped up hosting Betting Weekly Hardball, which is a new baseball show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Albert's been on that many a times. He's going to be on that as well later this week. So there are ways to bet this series other than the minus 715 and plus 500. We have a game one as well, but there's series props. There's 2.5 spread. There's 3.5. There's over under of 5.5 games with the over plus 110. So this series is favored to go no more than 5 games. Anything in terms of the series props, in terms of the spreads or over under of total games that jump out to you?
So I'm coming off a series win, right? We were on the Pacers plus 1.5 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm going to try to keep that momentum. I'm going to go OKC Thunder minus 2.5. I don't expect this to go more than 5 games. I think there's a outside possibility that OKC might even sweep them. But if you're not looking for that type of price, there's a lot of books, and I'm sure Bet Rivers has this too, Doug, if you have time to look it up. But if you can project the exact outcome, right? Game 1, game 2, game 3, and who the winner is. If you do Thunder, Pacers, Thunder, right? Gentleman sweep. Pacers get the first home game in game 3. That's plus 600, right? And so I think that's good value as well. I know that's chalk. I know that's easy, but I just think the Thunder from a, top to bottom, defensive versatility, the way they can win, whether they score 90 or score 130. I just feel that the Thunder are just way better than the Pacers. But that's not from a game to game standpoint. That's the beauty of sports betting, right? Sports betting, you can go game to game and handicap it by the spread. I'm just looking at the straight winners for this series, and I think the Thunder will get to 4 games before the Pacers get to 2.
I can get behind that. And I do think, and I'm hoping, because I don't think this Thunder team has the edge that to match what the Pacers would have coming home down 0-2. I think the line should be like Pacers minus 1.5, and it's going to be Thunder minus 3 or something like that. I think we're going to see a beatdown, much like we saw in game 3 in the Western Conference Finals with Minnesota against OKC. So I can certainly get behind that. There is a potential of a game 1 upset just because we've seen it a lot over the years in the finals. But I do think the market's way tighter than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So I do think the Thunder get there. But the Pacers, man, they have an edge to them that I really think is impressive. So I got to see it play out first. But I'm waiting for that game 3 spot if we are presented with such. What about player props for the series? We talked about it with Chris Massaro. He didn't understand the rebounding. Chet being a minus 121 favorite, considering he went under in every single game in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Western Conference Finals against Minnesota. There's a lot of bigs in there. Chet plays on the perimeter. So I think there's some opportunity here. We kicked around the assist market as well. Halliburton's a pretty significant favorite, but if the matchups are this one-sided on paper, maybe the Pacers aren't going to score that many points and the Thunder will just have a lot more assist opportunities. What stands out to you, my man?
Yeah, there's a lot of different game scripts or series scripts that you mentioned that could play out. And I think that's funny that Chris mentioned that because you see it in our pre-show notes. I'm also perplexed at the rebounding numbers, but I think it's more to do, not with Chet, but it's more to do with the others. Because if you look at like Pascal Siakam or Miles Turner, they're only averaging 4 to 5 rebounds a game anyways, right? Tyrese Halliburton, I think he had double-digit rebounds once in the last series. The rest is, mid 5, 6, 7 rebounds as well. So it's not an indictment at Chet when we say we don't know why he's the favorite. It's more of, I think everybody else is just mediocre when it comes to rebounds. But I do think there's value in Isaiah Hartenstein, right? We've seen him play the majority of the game at the 5 in the middle and just grabbing all the defensive boards. I think that's, if you're not going to do it for the series, maybe do it for game 1 before adjustments, right? The only way, in my opinion, Isaiah Hartenstein is not going to lead this series in rebounding is Indiana finds a way to play him out of the game, right? And that's not going to happen until game 1, until what we see in game 1. So I like Isaiah Hartenstein there. I think there's value. And then the other thing I talked about, if Indiana wants to make this competitive, get the ball out of Shea's hands. So that would mean, in my opinion, there's value in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to have the most assists, right? Because that team shoots a ton of threes. You can have Dort, Williams, Wiggins, Joe, all those guys make 2 to 3 threes a game, and that's 10 assists for you already, not accounting for the rolling of Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. So there's some value, in my opinion, with Shai Gilgeous' assists. Tyrese makes a lot of sense. He's going to have the ball, 80% of the time, so he makes the final decision. So that's the safe bet. But we're just looking for value here, and I think, the game script of Indiana getting the ball out of Shai's hands gives me credence in terms of the assist numbers.
Can't stress enough. Do not bet the minus 835. Look, Halliburton's been hurt in the playoffs a few times, right? Like there is that component to things. You're not going to boost your payout that much by adding that leg to a parlay at minus 835. There's just better things to do than that. Risk of injury alone. But as Albert alluded to, there is a path that someone else, like the league MVP, just having everyone on a string like a yo-yo and controlling everyone like a puppet and being able to orchestrate the offense and break down Indy's defense. Also, Halliburton in 2 regular season meetings was really limited, especially scoring. I mean, I like his under points in game 1. Lou Dort's going to be guarding him. And, if they set a pick, they'll switch and have SGA on him or another elite perimeter defender like Jalen Williams. So I don't think Hallie's going to be able to carve up opposing defense like he did in the conference finals against a bad Knicks defense. And that's something we should also mention, just how bad that Knicks D is, even under Thibodeau, who's known as a defensive-minded coach. Like I said, the roster's limited. So I just don't think Indiana's going to be able to move as freely as it has in the last couple rounds. Remember, first round, they played Milwaukee, bad defense to the nth degree. The Celtics were limited. Porzingis hurt. And then the Pacers, I mean, were dominant, but it's like, who are they playing, right? I'm just not a huge believer in I like Indiana, and they can make it work for sure. But the Cavs didn't show up; they were banged up as well, and I just worry that the offense for Indy could really hit a tough spot. So I would not lay the 835. Again, there's just risk reward. The juice isn't worth the squeeze in that front. Much like SGA to lead the series in points at minus 5,000, there's got to be better things to do with your time, let alone your money, than try to make that sort of effective. But I agree with the assist thing. I think SGA plus 350 at Bet Rivers is worth a play. I mean, I'm even enticed by like a McConnell, but he's not going to play enough. So maybe Jalen Williams at 50-1. That's just an obscene number. But again, it might be better to bet those guys each game and try to hit your lottery ticket in one game than try to have. Now, you're not going to get 50-1 on one game, but you're still going to get good odds. And I think one of those games could occur in that regard. So that's something to consider. Maybe break up your wager if you want to do a series bet versus each game bet, things like that. I guess we have to do the formality. SGA for points is minus 5,000 at Bet Rivers. Anyone else have remotely a chance? Maybe there's an injury. I don't know. Don't want to root for it, but it could happen. Anyone worth anything in your eyes there? Because 25-1 and 30-1 for Jalen Williams and Siakam respectively can be enticing.
Yeah, Jalen Williams to me would make the most sense, but you kind of alluded to this earlier, Doug, is you look up midway through the third quarter and you feel like Shai hasn't done anything. He has 30 points, right? And 12 of those are from the free throw line. He's just so good when it comes to putting the ball in the basket. And he does it without even you realizing. It's because he gets to his spot so easily. One thing I did want to clarify really quickly was Cleveland played a terrible defense in Milwaukee in round 1. They got lucky, right? They got Darius Garland hurt and Mobley hurt in round 2. So they played a hobbled Cleveland team. So they deserve to be here, obviously, but they also got very fortunate along the way with matchups and injuries and such. But one of the things, I mean, you mentioned in terms of most points, I like Jalen Williams in game 1, maybe not the series, Doug, but I know we're, jumping to game 1 now, but I think that there's some value there. Again, I'm harping in on it again, but it's going to depend on how Indiana plays defense against Shai, right? If he's going to be able to get to his spots, and I just watched the Mind the Game pod with LeBron James and Steve Nash, right? And they mentioned Spurs series between Spurs and Suns, and they allowed Nash just to get points left and right, runners, floaters, mid rangers. But it got Steve Nash out of his game because he's a pass first point guard. He wanted to get everybody else involved, and he would hear Greg Popovich, on the sideline saying, "Stay on your man. Let Steve do what he does." Right. And if they do that to Shea, maybe that's going to be something that can be a wild card against OKC, because maybe the strategy is to allow Shea to get 50 and not let the others shoot those threes that they get. I don't know, but OKC is a top 3 offense and a top 3 defense for a reason. They were 68 and 14 in the year for a reason, and right now they're sitting at 12 and 4 in these playoffs. They go 16 and 4, 16 and 5 with that regular season, Doug. They're going to go down as one of the top 5 greatest teams in history, and this is the youngest Thunder team we're going to see in the next few years.
I do think that's an option. Frankly, Denver with Jokic has gotten that treatment in the past, so that's certainly an option on that front. And Jalen Williams to be the game one's leading scorer plus 450. So the leading scorer for the game alone is plus 450, not for the series. So just keep that in mind. So let's segue to game one. You got a big spread 9. It was 9.5. The over has trickled up a little bit. It's 231.5. Yesterday, Massaro was on 230.5 was the number he locked in. Anything official you want to lock in? Because like I said earlier, this is your final show for hoops before game one.
No, I think one thing you mentioned earlier that's super, super smart and super sharp is you expect us to be 2-0 heading back to Indiana, and that's a spot that you want to zero in on. I'm actually on the same page. I think that's really, really smart to wait and see. You don't have to bet every single game. But for a lean in this first game, I do like the Thunder to come out in the first half. It's -5 right now. I think they're just gonna hit Indiana in the mouth. I think Indiana right now they're on a high, Doug. I think that the Knicks series, the Eastern Conference Finals, was kind of like their Super Bowl. It doesn't mean they're just gonna fold over and let OKC do its thing. But I think for the first half of the NBA Finals, I think OKC is going to be a little more prepared, a little more ready, and I see you fix it there. It's -4.5, -122 at Bet Rivers Thunder first half. I think I like that. It's not going to be official yet, but it could be by the time Thursday rolls around.
Yeah. So the numbers come down from 5 a little bit, but the juice went up to offset that. So it's gone from 5 to 4.5, but -122, as you mentioned. I can see that. There's a ridiculous stat. I guess for the last like 18 years, the game one home team is like 17-1 and like 14-4, something ATS. And it makes sense. They're the team that has home court advantage for a reason. And you're not getting a team that could have a flat spot, right? With that being said, we talked about LeBron and the Cavs going into Golden State, and that was the J.R. Smith meme where he thought they were leading and he was dribbling out. But you can catch some teams a little napping if there's a long layoff, but for the most part, there's no flat spots in the NBA Finals in game one. There shouldn't be, at least. And so usually water will find its level, but it is just a remarkable stat. Now, again, every year is different, things like that. I think the market's tighter, so I think the actual point spread is going to be tighter, whereas 10, 12 years ago, this number would have been like 6.
Yeah.
But the market just is so much sharp money is in the market that you don't get away with that anymore, especially in the NFL, but definitely the NBA. Any props in game one? You mentioned you're looking at Jalen Williams to be the leading scorer at plus 450. Obviously, so much depends on the Pacers' defensive game plan on SGA. Anything before we turn the page and head to the W?
One of my favorite players in the NBA is on the OKC bench is Alex Caruso. I just think he does so much, not only offensively and defensively. He dives for loose balls. He makes all the winning plays. So I'm going to see how game one goes. But if he's going to be a guy moving forward in the series, because he's going to be a top of the spear defender against Tyrese Halliburton, if he's going to play more than 20 minutes, closer to 30 minutes, I'm going to look into his props, Doug, because I think the more minutes he's going to get, he's just like you mentioned it, like energy finds the ball or a ball finds the energy, whatever that metaphor is. But that's what Alex Caruso is. If they need a 3, he's going to hit 2 of them, right? If they need a clutch steal, he's going to jump the passing lane. So I like Caruso, maybe stocks, maybe rebounds, something like that. Because if he's playing over 20 minutes, he's just going to get those numbers.
Okay. Yeah, no, Mark Daniel has tons of flexibility with that. He used Caruso in Game 7 against Denver to guard Jokic when he hadn't done that. We had Jalen Williams against the end of a game come in just for free throw boxing out, and he was a guy that was shooting 50% from three. And to start the second quarter, he was playing, and then later he was an afterthought. So a lot of flexibility for the lineup there. Caruso's PRA is 14.5, minus 115, both sides. And he's a guy who can hit big shots. He does have a ring on his resume with the Lakers in the bubble, and he certainly has that championship game experience. And he's one of the big differences between this year's Oak City team that is delivered and gone to the finals, and last year's that did not and fell short in the conference semis, the other one being Hartenstein. So keep in mind, Indiana lost both regular season meetings, but Chet Holmgren did not play. So if you're looking at stats and carrying over, there is a Holmgren element to that. Let's switch gears to the WNBA, and we know Indiana's WNBA team certainly moves the needle and very popular given Caitlin Clark. Now she's out at least 2 weeks with a quad injury. Indiana is winless since losing her. So this is significant. I was all over them in the last game. They lost as a big favorite, double-digit favorite. So pathetic showing in that regard. And I didn't know what to make of it, to be honest. Like, I was stunned because they started out strong. Now, injuries, they went against them. Their starting point guard, who's replacing Caitlin Clark, got rolled over her ankle, and Sydney Colson was out for the rest of the game, and then it was just haywire. But they're 0-2 straight up since the injury, 0-2 ATS. Fever got some steam. This was 4 overnight, touch 6, now 5.5 at Bet Rivers. I think Indiana is an auto fade right now due to Stephanie White, who at last check was the betting favorite for Coach of the Year. I think she's been an absolute disaster, unprepared and unable to make the right adjustments, a glaring adjustment she can't make. So I'm fading them. I think Indy's an auto fade right now.
Yeah, let me touch on that Stephanie White part. I think that WNBA as a whole, because I'm not going to say inferior in terms of basketball product when it comes to when you compare to them to the NBA, but there's just less versatilities, right? So when you think about adjustments, if a team loses,
it's a younger league.
Yeah, if you think about losing your superstar player, right? We're talking about the Jokic, the Doncic, the Giannis of the WNBA with Caitlin Clark. You know, if the Bucks lose Giannis, they're going to change their game plan, and maybe they're going to be more defensive minded, or they're going to play faster, whatever the case may be. They have that adjustment, and because these guys have been playing professional basketball for so long, and the coaches, like, they know how to make those not subtle, but very, very direct adjustments when it comes to their shoot around and their practices and things like that. I just don't see that with the WNBA, right? And that's not just Indiana and Stephanie White. Let's say, Dallas, they lost Paige Beckers for a couple games. It wasn't like they changed how they play. If Breanna Stewart goes out, it's not like the Liberty will really drastically change how they play. I mean, they just lose a lot of talent. So, I mean, with that said, I'm not trying to defend Stephanie White at all, but I just think that it's hard for a team to lose their player and expect them to win. You expect the bettings, the books to adjust already, right? This -5.5 number, maybe they're expecting a bounce back, but I'm going to be on Doug's side as well. I think they are a fade or a layoff until they show that they are not only prepared, but they can run offensive sets. I watched the first game out, after Caitlin Clark was out. Again, that was the first game, not trying to make excuses, but they weren't able to even string 4 or 5 passes in the half court together, right? If you can't do that, whether you are in the NBA, WNBA, or high school or college, if you can't have 4 passes in the half court set, you're not going to be able to score. So until I could see them run true offensive sets that gets them free, wide open looks, whether it's layups or threes, I'm not gonna back this team, and most likely I'm just gonna lay off until I see that they can do that. But timing wise, Doug, what a great time, right, for Indiana, because Caitlin Clark is out for a couple weeks, which sucks. Nobody wants to see that. No one wants to root for injuries, but their NBA team is in the finals, so they can, they're focused on that for at least the next 4 to 5 games.
Yeah, my issue is more the entire season with Stephanie White. She's so late to make adjustments. For example, Sydney Colson, the starting point guard, going down, she started to have Sophie Cunningham run the offense, and she's one of the slowest players on the court and clueless. And the other defense were pressing full court. There was no adjustment. So, for example, when they faced the Sun the other night, they were pressing Mabry. Didn't do that until the second half because she's such a slow player. But no one's up in her grill because she can't drive past anyone. So what Connecticut did is they moved Mabry out the ball, and she got the ball once someone else brought it up the court. The Fever never did that. Kelsey Mitchell, the entire offense should be running through her. She used to, before Clark got there, they did that. She's one of the fastest players in the league, if not that. And they never made adjustment. Tina Charles was going off on Aaliyah Boston. They didn't send a double to the third quarter. She's just asleep at the wheel. And I understand you don't replace Caitlin Clark, who might be the most valuable player. And frankly, her case is being made more so now. But it's just basic stuff and adjustments that aren't being made by someone who's got all this pedigree, was calling NBA games. I'm disappointed because I backed it and was in on it. So I'm going to go a small play, half a unit like usual. I'm going to take the Mystics plus the 5.5. I'll believe it when I see the Fever. They have on paper, but they don't know how to play off each other. And the Mystics coach, Johnson's back after missing the last game for his team with his daughter's graduation, I believe it was. So it's not like a health scare or anything. He's fine. He just, chose to do a family obligation. And they're way out coached. They have a deeper team, and they all and Fever getting everyone's best shot. They really are. Whether it be the crowds and whatnot, the Mystics will be ready for this game. The number's too high. I think they're an auto fade until, frankly, I lose 3 in a row against them. So I'm going to bet against the Fever here. I just don't think, to your point, Albert, the market can adjust with the absence of a player like Caitlin Clark. I just think it's too much. Anything in the other 2 games that caught your eye on tonight's slate?
I mean, the first thing I'm going to look at every single night in the WNBA is to see who Dallas is playing and look at the other team's team total over, right? So that would be an initial lean every single time, just because I know how bad Dallas's defense is. And if that team total for Seattle in tonight's case doesn't hit, it's not because of Dallas's defense, is because Seattle missed open shots. So if you think these professional basketball players can hit consistently open threes, Dallas is going to be the team that gives that other team those opportunities. So I would say Seattle Storm, team total over would be a lean. But for me, Doug, I'm going to be sitting out officially in the WNBA.
Yeah, my favorite play is in that game. It's the first half team total for the Storm. And I have an article coming out in the New York Post with this pick. And it's something I circled, and exactly what you were saying. The Wings defense is horrendous. And when Arike Gumbawale is chucking, it's going to be shorter shot clocks, things like that. Paige Beckers, we should mention. She's been solid. She's the favorite for Rookie of the Year. Significant favorite, like minus 900. She's out second game. She's going to miss with concussion due to a concussion. So it's going to be a Gumbawale early and often. Their defense is terrible. I just don't want to lay the first half spread because she could catch fire. I mean, she's an Olympian capable of making just enough shots to think she can shoot them all the time in terms of off balance and ill-advised. And they could get some things going. I still don't know what the deal is with Tierra McCowan, but if she plays, she's a force down low. I'd rather just bet the opposing team's team total first half. Maybe I'm influenced too much by their first meeting where the Storm dropped 56 and led 56-41 at half, and then second half was just cruise control, and there was 79-71 final. So I'm just going to go first half team total. I think you're going to get a great effort from Seattle off 3 straight losses. The Storm need this game. It's a tough travel spot for any team in the the Pacific Northwest. I think the Wings are an immature team. They're not well coached. They're a hot mess, but I'd rather do the team total because it's 44.5 range. So I'll just do that as a full unit play, not a half unit, a full unit. That's my top play today for sure, because I think it's the only way to play the Wings. If you want to lay the 5 or whatever it is, I can't blame you for that. I think they're going to pound them. I think the Storm are legit, but I think their points are going to be easy to come by against this leaky Dallas defense.
Doug, I do have a question for you when it comes to the WNBA, especially early in the regular season. Does it impact you that these are Commissioner Cups games and not just regular season games?
Yeah, I mean, it does, because point differential matters. So at the end of the game, we saw that in the NBA too, with guys trying to run up the score at the end. There weren't dribble outs, they were scoring. So maybe that's the steam on the Fever, but I think it's too significant of a line, like the margins of victory, 4 and 5. I'd rather take the dog there because the Mystics are going to bring it tonight. They're well coached and everything. I think the Storm could run up the score here. So maybe But then again, if you just bet the first half, and it gives you kind of flexibility to press second half, things like that. So 6 is the first half line. That's the proper line. It should not have been 5.5. So 6 is right. And I do think they can push the envelope. I do think my concern is Noel, their head coach, plays the rookie from France, Malanga, too much. They went to her down 3 against the Aces with like 14 seconds left. Like, why is she getting the ball and doing a fadeaway with the defensive player of the year guarding her? Now, she did create enough space and got a shot off, but why not go to Gumake? Why not go to Skylar Diggins? So I just, I don't know. I'm going to go first half team total, and then I'm willing to press second half. I try to guard against Agumbawale sometimes on her chucking, just because she can get hot, and it's such a painful watch if you're on the other side.
I do know we have a comment here on our YouTube. Ryan Huffman, he says Phoenix plus 12.5. That's a little interesting because we know the Lynx have been on fire. I think they're 7-0 on the season. Is this a good sell high spot on the Lynx stuff?
Well, they had a scare in the last game on Sunday against the Valkyries, and Mercury I'm assuming, are still without Alyssa Thomas, their best player. Now they have Sabali. They're just going to shoot a million threes, but so are the Lynx. Both teams play sort of a lot of high level, sort of analytically driven 3-point shooting. I love the Mercury coach. I think he's excellent. And frankly, Cheryl Reed is excellent too. I would lean dog here, but it's tough, man. This Minnesota team's tough to bet against because they run so much creative offense. But yeah, that's a lot of points. So I can understand that as well. All right, that'll do it. And I understand Ryan saying I'm tempted to take Mystics money line. Why not sprinkle a little bit? This Fever team, I mean, they're not going to drastically change their offense. They're just going to wait for Caitlin Clark to come back. But this is a team that's under 500 and certainly in some trouble in my eyes. So those are the two official plays for me, both in the WNBA. And Albert's got a series price, Thunder minus 2.5 games. So that's going to do it for this episode. Albert, you'll be back on the show, the Betting Weekly umbrella, some hoops and baseball or basketball later in the week, but obviously that'll be after game 1 of the NBA Finals is under our belt. So for Albert Nguyen and everyone behind the scenes that does such a great job with the graphics, producing, the research, I'm Doug Kezirian, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.